quarter till 1.
Welcome, everybody,
Well-
Kiwanians and guests. I would like to extend a special invitation to, or not invitation, but welcome to our Indiana District Governor, Taka Ogata. Is Taka here?
Don't see him here yet.
No.
If and when we see him. Chuck, thank you very much, will lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
You join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Duke, there you are, will offer an invocation.
Let us bow our heads. This is called a wish for the new year. Dear Lord, please give me a few friends who understand me and remain my friends. A work to do which has real value, for which the world would be the poorer. A mind unafraid to travel, even though the trail be not blazed. An understanding heart, a sense of humor, a time for quiet, silent meditation, a feeling in the presence of God, the patience to wait for the coming of these things, with the wisdom to recognize them when they're come. In His name we pray, amen.
Karen would like to share with us the grand success of our Red Kettle campaign.
You know, I always like to say that it's our community that wins when we challenge Rotary, and it's the Salvation Army that wins. And of course, it's not about the competition. Right. So, the golden kettle is mine. Sorry, it's ours. So, yes. And we're waiting for Rotary to bow in submission to bring back the kettle. But again, it's not about the competition. The Christmas total from this club, and this is really significant, and Duke, don't take this, and this does not go out of this room, my friend. I know, and she's pointing that there's people watching. Yes, I'll deny I ever said any of it. Here's what's pretty amazing. Between what we raised at Kettles, which was over $6,000, but between what our members and our colleagues and friends generated to support our community, we reached $35,000, $111. That is huge. Rotary, though, and this is way more than they've done, raised $32,000. So that really, to me, is a big win between our two clubs. We only beat them by $2,800. So next year, we got to take it up another notch. Thank you all. It was true generosity from this club and the fact that we care so much about our neighbors that made this possible. And yeah, the little kettle is coming back home.
And now I'd like to extend a very big appreciation for those members of our club who have been members for some time. Phyllis Usher, 29 years. Egad, I'm 28 years. Whoa. And Evelyn Eldridge, 27. Scott Beerby, 22. Todd Poindexter, 14 years. Peter Schuth and Greg Silver, 10 years. And again, deepest appreciation to the Abe Lincoln Committee, chairs Wendy Paddock and Brandon Harrogate, for all their efforts to organize our student interviews. I was joined by Tom Eubanks, John Frank, Scott Harkness, Steve Willem, Rob Schlegel, and Rush Yelverton as we met our 21 Circle of Valor students. It was just such a wonderful program. Everyone who maybe was unable to attend for whatever reason, that's just one of my favorite programs, and the kids were just fantastic. We met our 21 Circle of Valor students. The committee, and I can attest to that, had a very tough time selecting the 4 scholarship recipients from the field of 21. It was just, I mean, you could have closed your eyes and pointed to any one of these kids. They were just incredible. And when I think of the issues that I complain about, that I think are making my life miserable, whoa, let's look at these kids, and they're so positive. I was one of the kids that I was asked to usher in who was the second place winner, was in a wheelchair as a result of a degenerative disease that progressively over his young life caused him to lose the use of his hands and feet. And he was just the happiest kid. It was just brought tears to your eyes to hear him and see him. It was, well, he was just one of those that was just really tapped at your heartstrings. So Wendy and Brandon, what a beautiful job you guys did with that program. Please join us on Friday, the 11th of February, and we're going to reveal those 4 scholarship recipients. And that event is going to take place at Ivy Tech. Instead of our regular Thursday meeting that week. So, also, I'm told to ask you to please register and serve as table host for a candidate, which entails calling the student prior to the attend, welcoming them upon arrival at Ivy Tech, and sitting with them and their guests during the event. So we need some volunteers to step up for that. 20 in fact. So there is a clipboard at the registration desk. Is that the registration desk today, Kelly? Over here? Okay, perfect. Another way to participate is to buy a table, 8 tickets, with a $250 financial commitment. Invite your colleagues, any possible new members or sponsors. Next week, we will meet again here at the Columbia Club for the candlelighting and additional presentation of awards, including Perfect Attendance and Ruby K. Awards. On February 3rd, we are welcoming Aaron Teeter, Indianapolis Mayor's Office of Education Innovation, and operations of mayor-sponsored public charter schools that educate about 18,000 students across our city. And we are circulating, I think, a clipboard for help at those meetings, and you can sign up to assist at the check-in table. And Roger is here to introduce our speaker, INDOT Commissioner Joe McGuinness.
Thank you, President Carroll. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mr. Joe McGuinness, Commissioner of the Indiana Department of Transportation. First of all, I want to thank Joe for joining us today, taking time out of his busy schedule, I'm sure, to give us an overview of what's going on with the Highway Department throughout the state, particularly in Marion County. Roads affect us all, almost every day. So I'm very interested to hear what's going on, new updates. Joe was appointed as Commissioner in January 2017 by Governor Eric Holcomb. He is a lifelong Johnson County resident and has been actively involved in transportation and infrastructure planning in central Indiana. Joe graduated from Franklin College in 2000 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and Criminal Justice, and received a Master of Business Administration degree in accounting from Indiana Wesleyan University in 2009. Joe was elected mayor of Franklin, Indiana in November 2011. Do you remember that date? And took office in January 2012. As mayor, Joe implemented innovative concepts in Franklin and oversaw a significant resurgence in the downtown area. Much of this growth and redevelopment occurred because of substantial investment in infrastructure and solid economic development projects. Joe and his wife Ann have been married since October of 2001 and have 2 children. Joe tells me their son is a senior at Franklin Community and their daughter is a sophomore? Freshman. Now, I'm always 1 year off. Joe enjoys spending time with his family, coaching children in sports, and taking an active role in his community. I saw firsthand the improvements made during Joe's term as mayor while I was a Johnson County resident. I know that he is genuinely interested in providing Indiana the infrastructure that enhances our opportunities for economic growth and recreational purposes while managing the budget provided. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Joe McGuinness to our club today.
Good afternoon. Appreciate the warm welcome, and what Roger didn't point out is that for several years of my childhood, we lived across the street from each other in the Center Grove neighborhood area. And so I've known Roger and his family for quite some time. Haven't seen or talked to him in a very long time, but thank you for reaching out and extending the invitation to be with you all here today. INDOT actually just did yesterday, filmed a kind of like a 5-year review of where the agency's been over the last 5 years. So to kind of put things in perspective, where INDOT was when I first came in, I remember Jenny, she's really kind of the commissioner. She's the administrative assistant for all of us yahoos on the executive staff at INDOT. And I walked in the first day and I didn't know her. And I said, Jenny, how long have you been with INDOT? At that time, she said 6 years. I said, okay. But I also knew from my time as mayor working with INDOT on a regular basis, there had been a lot of turnover in the commissioner's office. And so I said, well, so what number am I? She says, you're number 4. And she went right back to her emails or typing or whatever it is that she was doing. Because she knew that you're going to be gone in 12 to 18 months, so why does it matter? But here I am 5 years later. And so I did a video yesterday and just kind of talked about where we've come and where we've been. And it's been a crazy wild ride for 5 years. And one of the things that just blows me away, and I get asked this a lot, is what's one thing that surprised you? The state is incredibly large. You don't think about traveling from Elkhart to County to Warwick County in 2 days until you have to do it, and how far that really is. And I did that, I think, in my second year. I spoke to a chamber, the Elkhart County Chamber, and then the Warwick County Chamber the very next day. It's like, holy smokes, this is a long path. And so, but it's been an amazing time. And one of the things I said yesterday too in the video is when I was with the city of Franklin, we had 171 full-time employees. I don't know the exact number we are today, but I know it's in the 3,550 range. About 3,550 employees are at INDOT. And I don't know all their names, although I did know most of our city employees' names. But it's just crazy, the differences and where we're at. We oversee almost 30,000 lane miles of road around the state, about 5,700 bridges. I always explain because people think like Market Street is INDOT. It's not. We actually don't have a whole lot of infrastructure outside of interstates inside the county confines of Marion County. That was all relinquished to the city back during the Bill Hudnett, when he was mayor during those days. Kathy Davis was running INDOT at the time. So outside of interstates, INDOT really doesn't own any infrastructure inside the 4 walls of Marion County, thankfully. Very appreciative of that. But one of the main differences is between, so if it starts with an SR, state road, US highway, or an I, it's us, anywhere in the state of Indiana. County roads obviously are numbered 300 north or whatever, those are all the county responsibility. And then pretty much anything that has a name is going to be a city responsibility. Market Street, for example, West Street, North Street, all those would be the responsibility of a city or a town, wherever it's at around the state of Indiana. And a lot of times our customer service call center gets filled up every day. We get about 90,000 phone calls in a year. Many of them are for outside of our purview, and so we try to get them directed and pointed in the right direction and get them connected with their county highway department or whomever it is that they need to speak with. So it's $3.6 billion this year, this fiscal year. So our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30. So we're in fiscal year 22 through the end of June, and so it's about $3.6 billion this year. The city of Franklin's budget, when I left, the general fund was just shy of 15 million. That's with an M. So it's a little bit different to come up to the big leagues and deal with 3.6 billion. But we have, like I said, over 3,500 people, and they all know what they're doing. I'm just here to come speak to Kiwanis and Chambers of Commerce. So, it's been an amazing run. In 2017, if you all recall, there was a lot of legislation that was being passed over at the State House during session, which we are in the middle of a session right now. Unfortunately, it's a short session, so no budget. But the long session in 2017 provided long-term road funding opportunities for INDOT and for local cities, towns, and counties. So what that did is it allowed us to create a program called Next Level Roads. If you haven't figured it out yet, everything that Eric Holcomb does as governor, it has next level jobs, next level education, next level roads in this situation. So it started off as $60 billion over the 20 years, all cash, no debt financing. It's now increased a little bit. We did receive some of the COVID money, and we've also received some federal infrastructure dollars, which I'll talk about here momentarily. But when you think about 60 billion, that's like a number that it's hard for me to fathom. But to think about with those 30,000 lane miles and 5,700 bridges that we have around the state, and trying to get them to a level of fair or better. Fair to me sounds like a C. When I was in high school, that was okay by my standards. It wasn't necessarily okay by my parents' standards. But trust me, when we talk about fair, that is actually at a level it's not going to blow out your tires and bend your rims when you're traveling on the interstates or on our state highways. A lot of activity going on in DC. You've probably heard over the last really 60 days or so a lot of federal infrastructure package that has been rolled out. There's a lot of money going in various different directions. The part that is important to INDOT, you've probably heard about a $6.6 billion coming to the state of Indiana into INDOT. That number is correct, although there's kind of like an asterisk. So a lot of that is reauthorization money. So the FAST Act is what states were still operating off of, which originated under the Obama administration. Had actually expired, and then expired for about 2 or 3 years, and we were just getting continuing resolutions from Congress every 6 months just to keep everybody afloat. And so in any normal year before the federal infrastructure, it actually is called bill, it's bipartisan infrastructure law. So bill was brought around. We received $1 billion, last year we received $1.05 billion from federal highway. So you think about north of $3 billion, about a third of our budget comes from federal highway. So what this new bill does for us is it reauthorizes those dollars and adds in additional money into the pot. And it does ramp up. It's a 5-year bill, so it does ramp up over those 5 years. Year one, so here in this, their fiscal years are different. Theirs are September when it starts, and it'll be about $150 million of new money coming to Indiana, in addition to the $1.05 billion that we were already going to receive. That is just strictly for roads and bridges. There's a lot of additional funds, about $100 million, $110 million over the next 5 years, coming to Indiana for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, for example. So EV charging stations, whether it's for Tesla or any of the other major manufacturers. I tend to look at that a little bit differently. In the world that we all live in, time is money. whether you're waiting on your Amazon package, or you're trying to get your kids to a ball game, or you're trying to get to an office. Time is money. And let's think outside the box. So we are actually the first state in the nation, and we have a tremendous partnership, sorry, not Butler, but with Purdue University. But have a tremendous relationship with Purdue University. Obviously, it's a fairly decent engineering school for us, and so we get to work with them quite a bit, and we appreciate that. And so what we've been working on with Purdue over the last, really over 3 years now, has been, can we put that electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the surface of the road? So as you're driving, you're charging. We're not stopping for 30 to 45 minutes to recharge as you're driving to Chicago, for example. We also have a relationship because of this with Cummins down in Columbus and here in Indianapolis, because they are now building fully electric drivetrains and for box trucks and larger. And their largest customer is FedEx, and we're this world's second largest hub right here at the Indianapolis International Airport. And so trying to work with all of these partners in identifying a way to put that induction equipment in the surface, as opposed to having to pull over at a rest stop or a truck stop or whatever, and fill up and recharge your battery. So some really cool stuff coming. I'm holding out. We're not really releasing any plans for the $100 million on EV charging, because I'm asking Federal Highway to allow us to use that on, let's just not just put these charging boxes everywhere. Can we be creative and have some pilot programs to possibly put this in? Michigan jumped in about 2 or 3 months ago. Governor Gretchen Whitmer put out there that they're leading this. They're not. We are. But Michigan is also now on board, and they're also doing some testing as well. We are on the cusp of doing some of this on open road, likely on an interstate here in Indianapolis. Hopefully soon, which would be really cool. We don't know if it's going to work. We really don't. But why not? Why not think a little bit differently and how we can use those dollars? I talked about the road funding, particularly here in the state. In 2017, when we came in, before road funding allowed us to do some pretty amazing things, we managed about 850 projects around the state of Indiana. We just finished up the 2021 construction season was a little over 1,300 projects. That does not include any new federal money. So we've added a lot to our program, and has really put the pinch on everyone here in this room and everyone that's watching on screen, and everybody that's out here walking on the circle right now. Orange barrels and barrier wall are my favorite. They're not yours, I get it. But when I see those, I see progress, and I know that it's necessary for commerce, it's necessary for Hoosiers. As Roger mentioned, I challenged some of my fellow cabinet members. I asked them, name a state agency that you touch every single day. It's INDOT. None of us want to deal with DCS. None of us want to deal with state police. If you have a driver's license, you deal with the BMV. But my daughter doesn't have a driver's license, so she doesn't deal with the BMV. But I have to get her to school, I have to drive across US 31. And so likely everybody has some sort of interaction with INDOT every single day. And so we don't take that responsibility lightly. And so one of the things that we've been really trying to push is in these work zones is trying to make them safer. The worst phone calls you could ever imagine I get often involve the state police superintendent, Doug Carter, calling me and telling me about a fatality somewhere on the interstate. And those are the absolute worst phone calls you could ever get. It's over 90% of fatalities on the interstates are actually motorists. They are not people that are working in the work zones. When I talk about accidents in the work zone or fatalities in the work zones, over 90% are people driving through the work zone, and it's not construction workers. But we're trying to do everything we can to protect Hoosiers and protect the people, the men and women that are working in the zones. So we like to do full closures now. We like to go in and just shut down the interstate. There's one really close to here that everybody's familiar with. That fingers crossed and everything aligns and the weather holds out. We can continue to work on days like today when it's 15 degrees as long as we don't have precipitation, and the North Split can continue to move forward. The North Split is obviously a massive project that we've taken on, and everything aligns. Like I said, we'll have it open by Thanksgiving this year, 2022. So Don't, keep your pens down, keep your phones in. We're not recording any of this, writing it down, Roger.
Don't read that.
But, and we have a lot of, we've had a lot of success with the closures. We do get to rip the Band-Aid off. So for example, this project would have been over 3 construction seasons if we had not done a full closure. And so we're able to take up 1.5 years as opposed to 3 by just literally just ripping the Band-Aid off and opening it up. And it was challenging getting into construction. There was a lot of advocacy groups. There was a lot of interaction between my office and the folks that live and work in those neighborhoods. And we listened. And after 16 different designs, we finally settled on one that I think everybody was comfortable with. And I think honestly, it's probably the best. It was good that happened because it allowed us to open our engineering minds a little bit. I'm not an engineer, don't even try to play one. But it allowed us to open up our engineering minds a little bit. And so what you might be used to, me coming from the south side, if I'm trying to get on 65 and I want to stay on 65 and get to Butler University or Chicago, there was always this weave. I had to weave 2 or 3 different times, and sometimes you only have a quarter to a half a mile to, if I need to get up on Meridian Street, I have to have this really difficult weave. We eliminate all that. And so if you're on 65, you stay on 65. If you want to be on 70 and you're on 70, you stay on 70. So we've eliminated, everything will flip. So next time you see it, it'll look completely different. If you drive through there now, you notice a difference. There's a lot of new flyovers and a lot of new bridges being constructed. So we're going to eliminate a lot of the safety issues. Every morning I get in my car, I turn on the radio, and they give the traffic report, and there would be an accident in the North Split. We think that we're going to be able to drastically reduce the amount of accidents there that occur in the split once it opens back up later this year. One of the other things that we were able to do because of the new design, the 16th design on this, was free up. So if you're all familiar with the Frank O'Bannon, Governor O'Bannon, the soccer fields that are kind of there on the northeast corner, I guess, we're going to be able to free up about 40 acres of green space, right kind of on the backside of the O'Bannon soccer fields. And the city is going to take that. And so they're going to have been working with Dan Parker and Indy DPW and likely went up in the Parks Department. But that 40 acres will go into the city once we're completed and we're out of the way and moved on. Probably won't be until sometime in 2023, just because we're still going to be planting grass seed and trees and those kind of things. But we'll likely give that over to the city, and they can. I've heard conversations about dog parks and adding on to the trail network and all those kind of things. So it'll be a really neat opportunity for the city to pick up 40 acres, really downtown Indianapolis, and add that into their park inventory. Another major one that's really not impacting Marion County yet, as I told Roger though over lunch, it will be very soon, is I-69. And I-69 Section 6, which is the Martinsville to 465 on the southwest side piece. Full closure on Martinsville is now open, thankfully. And we just cut the ribbon on that just a few days before Christmas this year, I guess now last year in December. And was very proud of the work that our folks at INDOT and our contractors and our consultants did to really kind of push the envelope and get that one opened up as quickly as we were able to get it open. It's going to be a massive addition to the state, to commerce, to be able to go from, and they're actually in Windsor right now into Detroit, they're building a new bridge that will tie into I-69 called the Gordie Howe Bridge, which will then really truly link 3 countries between Canada, US, and Mexico, which is pretty amazing to think that we're one of the last little stretches of this, and it's this 22 to 24 mile section between Martinsville, Indiana, and Indianapolis, Indiana, is kind of the last little piece. But very proud that we've tackled this $1.7 billion project with cash. We have no debt financing involved at all on this project, and really looking forward to having this completed, not as soon as the North Split, but by the end of 2024, it will be completed. So we've expedited that project by 3 years, just by infusing a bunch of cash into the project. You really want to see like how construction works. Right now is the perfect time to see it. So if you start on the north end of this on 465 and you come south on 30, what is today still 37, you'll start to see some right-of-way being cleared As you continue to move south, you'll start to see some utilities being relocated. As you get really into Johnson County and Cross County Line Road right there, you'll start to see additional activity. You get further south into Johnson County, like around 144, and it's like Beirut. I mean, it is completely torn apart, and everything is kind of chaotic, but still functioning. It's all open. And then you get down in through Martinsville, and you really kind of see the latter stages of construction, particularly this spring when we start to plant some of the seeds in the trees and those kind of things. So it's really kind of cool if you're looking for, you know, a couple hours to waste. It's kind of neat to see how every phase of construction and how it all works. Like I said, hopefully by the end of 2024, we'll have that one fully open. Another one that's big, obviously from Southwest Indiana, we announced back in June, the governor announced back in June, getting the Ohio River crossing. So there's 2 bridges right now that get you from Evansville into Henderson, Kentucky, and then on your way further south. The challenge with them are they're both U.S. highways, both U.S. 41 bridges, and one of them's 55, 56 years old, the other one's pushing 70 years old. And so they're nearly at the end of their useful life. And so really working with Kentucky and kind of like what we did in Jeffersonville into Louisville, the twin bridges down, the 2 bridges down there, the toll bridges, is creating that new access point on I-69 to get you across the river. It will be a toll bridge. However, we are going to leave one of the US 41 bridges in place, and it will be free, similar to what happened in Jeffersonville with US 31 bridge, to be able to get you from Evansville into Henderson. And so back in June, announced a $200 million commitment to kind of kickstart that project. Kentucky has $75 million in projects that they let back in November or December. There's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of money to be identified, but that project will get started here in the next couple of years, which will be huge for Southwest Indiana and anybody that's really trying to travel to go down to south and southwest. One of my favorite, and you can imagine being a former mayor for 5 years, one of my favorite programs that we run is called Community Crossings Matching Grant Program. And so what Community Crossings is we have a matching grant program for cities, towns, and counties of any size. There's a town down on the Ohio River by the name, has anybody ever heard of the town called Mockport, Indiana? Probably not, 81 people. Population 81, that was a couple years ago. I don't know if it's grown or declined, but it was a couple years ago, it was 81 people. And they received a $150,000 grant from us, matching grant, to pave all 3.5 miles of roadway that they have. And they matched, they put their portion in too. They had 3.5 miles of road, and they were able to knock it all out. So we have communities like Mockport, we have cities the size of Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, South Bend, Evansville, that have benefited from this program. And as of this past fall, we announced another $100 million that went out the door. We do this twice a year, totaling about $200 to $220 million between the 2 calls for projects. And we're now over $1 billion that we've invested since 2016 in these communities. I call this our Main Street program because these dollars cannot ever be used on a state highway. They have to be used on Main Street, Indiana. And I received one my last year as mayor when this program was created as a pilot program, received $1 million grant, and since then we've had $7 or $8 million invested on that one street that we were able to reconstruct with private development. And they're actually getting ready to build some new brownstones and condos in downtown Franklin because of Community Crossings, what Community Crossings has meant to communities like Franklin. So it's been an unbelievable program, and I'm certainly proud of it, and look forward to hopefully that we can continue on. It's our partnership with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. If you go to the B&B and you re-register your vehicles, you'll see a $15 charge on there. That $15 is what it is. It goes to Community Crossings. So, I'll stop there. I'm more of a Q&A. You don't want to hear a politician, former politician talk with a sociology and criminal justice degree. I don't know how that all worked out to where I'm at today, but as I tell high school kids, or my own high school kids, is keep your options open. You think you want to be, I thought I wanted to be a police officer. As Roger knows, I grew up in a police household. That obviously never worked out. It worked out for the better, in my opinion, but keep your options open and always look for learning opportunities, because you never know what's going to come up. So, yes? Yes?
Hey Joe, can you talk about who preparation for interstates. It seems to me like that Indiana, as I drive in Indiana, interstates primarily, they seem to be constantly deteriorating. And even new interstates, for instance, the newer sections south of, 65 south of Sherrill, Maryland. It's like a washboard.
Yeah.
And it's new pavement.
Yeah.
Who designs the pavement?
Yes.
Concrete design.
So typically that's going to be, so we have full-time people that are working in research and development. We have offices here in Indy. We have an office on campus in West Lafayette. And so working with Purdue, constantly doing research. Our Office of Materials is also here in Indianapolis. They're constantly doing, you ever drive through and you see this perfectly round circle that's been cut out, probably about that big around. We call it a puck, like a hockey puck. That's intentional, and that's what they're doing is they're testing the subgrade, they're testing all those kinds of things. And they'll a lot of times even do it on a brand new something that had just been built 6 months ago. The challenge that we have in most states, obviously we have weather issues. We all blame the weather, the freeze thaw. One of the other things that we have is we had, and this number is a couple years old, but in 2019 we had $750 billion worth of freight moved along our interstates. And that is more interstate traffic, miles traveled by tractor trailer than any other state in the country. And so we get pounded with 80,000 plus pound vehicles traveling around. We're getting better at that design and that subgrade. Constantly, our team we created about 3 years ago now, created an Indiana transportation team. And so there's engineering firm, there's contractors, and there's INDOT. We all come together, and because in historically, a lot of times you get this, who's the customer, and who's the designer, and who's the contractor, and all those kind of things, and we all just kind of said, enough is enough. We've got this money, the sandbox just got bigger, we all have to learn how to play fairly in the sandbox, let's work together and do this. And so we're working with engineers too, private engineering firms to better understand what materials do you have, what are you guys researching, what are you guys being able to develop. So your point is well taken, and it's constantly evolving and hopefully improving. But a lot of times it's a failure in the subgrade, and the further south you go, the more of the clay materials, and it's a lot harder for us to figure those things. I know we were talking about those up like around Lowell, where we added travel lane on 65, kind of Lowell on the south side of that. Yeah, Max?
Could you talk a little about how you schedule out projects, and specifically the closer you get to Indianapolis and Fort Wayne, with those being two of the bigger hubs for conventions and other large events coming to town, and how you kind of pick and choose when you start a project that might impact something like that?
Yeah, so obviously Indianapolis is a big, March Madness was kind of sprung, it wasn't something that anybody was anticipating last year, but college football playoffs, large conventions, FFA, or the Firefighters Convention, and all those events that occur here, Indianapolis, the 500, and all the large events. Oftentimes when we're planning around these events, the one thing we try to avoid is closures in or around those events. The North Split we could not avoid with the college football playoffs, and all the folks that were on the planning committee, they knew that a couple years in advance. But we also didn't know if the game was going to be held, probably really up until a couple weeks before. And so when we do this, we try just to avoid closures. The construction is really kind of challenging on how you really can't halt construction. We do on occasion, if we're at a point where we can stop and it's not just a dirt road, and we'll move out of the way for Indianapolis 500, for example. That's usually one of the bigger ones. It's a weekend, and we'll try to halt construction during that period of time, particularly on the west side. Yes, sir.
How are you going to replace the gas tax that you lose as we have more and more electric vehicles?
Yeah, so that's the $3.6 billion question that we're all asking ourselves right now. So it's going to be challenging, and here's why. So electric vehicles, if you have an electric vehicle in the state of Indiana right now and you go to register it, you're charged $150 a year, and that's to replace fuel tax. You can do the quick math, and it doesn't really completely add up The 150 is not gonna.
Is that a recommendation, or is that happening?
That happens now. Yeah, that started in 2017. Yep, in 2017, on July 1st, 2017 is when that went into law. And so if you have if you're registering an electric vehicle today, it's $150 in addition to whatever the plates cost. So looking out into the future, if we can make this work by putting the electrification system into the surface, is there a way that we can monetize that? And as you're driving, as Amazon is delivering that package and they're charging their truck or their van on our highways, is there a way that we can monetize that and charge them by the kilowatt hour or however that is determined? Some of the other challenges, electric vehicle charging stations, rest areas, for example. We have 29 rest areas around the state of Indiana. United States Congress does not allow us to monetize anything there. So if you've ever been to a rest area, the only thing you can ever spend your money on there is a bag of chips, a candy bar, or a can of Coke, or Pepsi. And that's on purpose by Congress. They don't want us to be able to sell anything or any materials or any merchandise at those rest areas. So if you need to stop and charge your vehicle along the way on I-65 in Seymour, Indiana, and you go to stop at one of our rest areas and you plug in, we currently could not charge you for that. So you would be getting a free charge from us, when I feel like we should be able to monetize that. One, we're having to pay for the electricity, and two, you're also traveling on our roadway and causing probably some sort of damage along the way. We cannot charge for any of those things right now. So there's 50 state DOTs now asking Congress to change that and allow us to at least have something that we can do. Because right now the only tool that we have is tolling, and nobody likes tolling. It gets people upset that, well, the road is free today, quote unquote free today. Why should I have to pay on it to drive on it tomorrow?
The other question I had is about 465.
Yeah.
The speed limit.
Yeah.
or lack of
Yeah.
enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah,
Other
the lack of enforcement.
cities with beltways have higher speed limits than
Yeah.
55 in many cases.
So I've asked that question.
Everybody
before.
drives 70 or 80.
They do, and unfortunately, I don't have enforcement under my purview. Some states do, like Ohio, for example. Their state highway patrol is underneath their DOT. I don't have that, or I'd be showing you my badge and everything else all the time. But we don't have that authority. So that is the state police or a local law enforcement department, and so it's really dependent upon how they plan to enforce. I will tell you, 65 this morning between Johnson County and Marion County was loaded with state troopers, and I was very pleased to see that. 465 is nothing more than a much larger version of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And the speed limit was determined back during the days when it was designed 40, 50 years ago. And the engineers at the time, this is what has been told to me, obviously I wasn't around for it, is that when it was designed at a high-speed 55-mile-an-hour traveling speed. And by today's standards, 55 is what some people drive that in my neighborhood. And so getting it up to a 70 would violate some of the National Highway Traffic Standard, and Federal Highway would have to approve.
Was there something between 55 and 70?
We would have to get approval for that. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions. First, will the rest area on 74, like at Batesville area on your way to Cincinnati, will it ever be rebuilt?
Yeah, so we are right now in the middle of $300+ million investment in our rest areas over like 10, 12 years. Because I intentionally visit them, and they're not the nicest. And so some of them we're removing. So we have 29, I said 29, we actually have 30. We just opened one in Angola up in Pigeon Creek this past year. So we technically have 30 now. And we're gonna get to 15. But they're gonna be more large welcome centers with more truck parking opportunities, because right now you see trucks all the time parked overnight on our roads and on the ramps, and that's not safe. And kind of to your point, the shoulder of the roads are never designed for parking more than just a standard pickup truck or a van. And so we're in the process of replacing a lot of those rest areas right now, and making them more, we have one under construction right now up in Kankakee on 65, and so it'll look like the windmills that you see on 65 as you're driving north. So we're trying to kind of Terre Haute, we've got one that's being designed, it's going to look like the pagoda, to kind of throw homage to the Holman George family, and so out of Terre Haute, and so that'll look like the pagoda out of the Speedway.
So is that one that's gonna be eliminated, or is it going to become one?
We're
of your
tearing down the old ones and then reconstructing with new welcome centers. Yeah.
And another question, we drive a lot, and we like doing that rather than flying over things, but I have to listen to my husband every time we're on a 2-lane major highway. Why don't we have 3 lanes? Every time we go to another state, he finds a 3-lane highway that he loves, and we don't seem to have very many.
Yeah.
And is that something that, yeah, I understand the difficulty because you have to take land and so forth, but
Yeah.
is that something that is projected in the future to,
So
with all the highway, the traffic is enormous, so
It
it
is.
would make sense.
Yeah, so when you talk about particular US highways or state roads and with Super 2s, what do you call them, when you have the additional lane, or you have, when you have the turn lanes on the US highways and the state roads, when you're talking more on the interstates, we have a plan to add the travel lanes. We actually just completed a plan in 2021 to kind of roll out over the next 20 years on how we do this. It is growing more and more expensive. So for example, we have an added travel lane project going on. We just had one in like Bartholomew, Jackson County area on 65. It was $15 million a mile to add one travel lane. And so the price adds up real quick. And so we continue to push forward with adding the lanes. I get frustrated too when I'm stuck behind a semi in both lanes and I'm trying to drive faster than 55 on 465. But it does get frustrating, and so we do have a plan that we're working towards. Right now, it's just extremely cost prohibitive. Yeah, I'm just trying to maintain what we have and not adding additional capital or capital assets that we may or may not be able to afford to maintain. So you've had your hand up, Nancy.
Well, I wanted to compliment you on the stretch of highway between Bloomington, 69, between Bloomington and Evansville. But there were no warning signs when I was first driving it that said, there's no way to get off, there's nothing to drink.
Yes.
Please don't need a restroom because
Yes.
that's it. You know, you're gonna get there really fast and it's gonna be beautiful. I wondered, you know if you've ridden on it.
Oh, yes.
It's fabulous, I mean, it is. Do you expect to have some services along the way in time, or does that come down to the localities themselves putting those in?
So you're absolutely right, and we tend to joke about it that, you know, some of us, we have 6 district offices around the state. So we have central office here in Indianapolis, right next to the State House, and we have 6 districts around the state. And so one of those is Vincent. And so if you're traveling down there, we all joke like, well, make sure you stop in Bloomington, because if you need fuel or if you need to use the restroom and you get south of Bloomington, you're in trouble. Until you get to about Crane, and then you have one option right there. So that is all dependent upon the locals and developers. And as much as I would love to see, I know the city of Washington has put together kind of a master plan, just because I knew the former mayor and he was talking to me about what they're doing, and they've kind of created this TIF district around that interchange that they have there in Washington, one of their interchanges. And so I know they have some development stuff that's going on. I don't exactly know what will end up being there, but I would love to tell you, yeah, absolutely, we're gonna be able to drop in some filling stations and other things, but
I would still choose it, it's still a better road.
it is nice. And there's not a lot of people on it either right now.
No,
So.
anybody on it is great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here today. It was great.
Thank you, Joe. I'll have to say that I will no longer be mumbling what I was mumbling coming downtown today. I will think, thanks, Joe. One of these days we're going to have a more pleasant, beautiful, and efficient city and state. Thanks again. And as a certificate of appreciation for your being here today, I'd like to tell you that we are going to make a donation in your name to the Kids Voice of Indiana, whose mission is to serve Indiana's children and families by providing legal education, child advocacy, and family visitation through our programs. So as a thank you for coming and being a part of our club today, we'd like to present you with that certificate.
Thank you, that's awesome. Appreciate that.
And I thank everyone for being present. This was, I thoroughly enjoyed this program. I think all of us have a little bit of negative thinking when we are trying to get around the city and state. And we will think of you and thank you for making our city and state more pleasant and better in our future. Is it Thanksgiving this year or Thanksgiving?
Yes, 22.
This year, okay. Come on, Thanksgiving. Okay, we are adjourned.